So here's a question I hear frequently. Is X a good motorcycle to start on? You know, there's probably more opinions to the correct answer to this subject than there are motorcycle options available to the new rider. Usually when this discussion comes up, it's related to the size, power, and weight of the motorcycle and whether it's appropriate for a new rider. When it comes to this subject, there are two extremes. You know, one person will say no rider should be allowed to even purchase a larger motorcycle until they've shown proficiency on a smaller motorcycle and ridden it for a certain number of miles. Some places even have graduated license for riders, forcing them to start on a smaller motorcycle and work their way up in size and power. But some riders will say just buy whatever you want and ride it like you stole it. So let me start this video with this statement. If you're an adult, if you have a motorcycle license and training, if you're old enough to buy your own motorcycle and can ride it safely, I believe you should be free to ultimately answer this question for yourself. Now, I do have an opinion on the subject, and I'll share my opinion in this video, but ultimately it's up to you to make a wise decision for yourself, not some guy, me, sitting in his shop who doesn't know you and has never seen you ride to make that decision for you. But there are a lot of reasons why the answer to this question is more complicated than one would initially believe. In this video, we'll talk about some of those reasons and we'll discuss some things that you may not have considered on the subject. As always, please share your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think on this subject. So, someone asked me if some large cruiser is okay as a starter motorcycle, or maybe they've got their eye on that 600cc sport bike or even a leader bike. I've seen guys start on leader bikes. In order to answer the question concerning a new rider starting out on a larger, more powerful motorcycle, there are some questions that should be answered first that you should consider. Can you ride a bicycle well? Now, I know that seems like a funny question, but a lot of riders attempt to ride a motorcycle and have never even ridden a bicycle, or it's been a whole lot of years since they have. Those who have never ridden a bicycle are at a huge disadvantage when they try to learn to ride a motorcycle. I know, I've seen it. Another question you might want to ask yourself is, have you ever driven a stick shift in a car? If not, you're going to have to learn how to use the clutch and how it operates, because dumping the clutch in a car has fewer possible negative outcomes than doing so on a powerful motorcycle. A rider who's proficient at driving a standard transmission car is going to have a big advantage over a rider who cannot drive a standard transmission. Another question, are you generally athletic and in good shape? Have you played sports, etc.? You know, when I was training to become a riding instructor, one of my mentors stated that riders struggle more if they've never been involved in sports or other activities. You know, his opinion was that a rider who was athletic had an advantage over a rider who spent all their time sitting on a couch watching TV or playing video games, and I found this to be true as well. It doesn't mean that the couch potato can't learn to ride a motorcycle well, but they're at a huge disadvantage to start. Another question to consider is, how big are you? You know, just this variable alone is going to have an impact on what a rider should or should not ride. A rider who is 5'6" and 115 pounds could be very comfortable on a Honda Rebel or even a Honda Grom for that matter. A rider who's 6'8" and 340 pounds would look like a gorilla riding a football on a Honda Grom, and they might be just as proficient at riding at it because of their size. Did you take the MSF class or new rider class and pass it with no issues at all? You know, there are some riders who pass the new rider class, and there are some riders who excel in the new rider class. Which one were you when you took the class? Because there are a whole lot of variables, and because these videos reach such a diverse audience, the safe answer when someone asks me that question, and I don't know them, is to say, start on a smaller, less powerful motorcycle and work your way up, and buy what you would ultimately like to ride after you've ridden a smaller motorcycle for a while. But if you can ride a bicycle well, you're proficient in a standard transmission car, you were the starting middle linebacker of your high school football team, or maybe a gymnast, and you're still in great shape, and you breeze through the MSF class, you might be able to start on a larger bike and not have as many issues. But as we like to say on the forums, it depends. Your physical size is also going to have an impact on finding that first right motorcycle for you. But if we're totally honest with ourselves, I think there are two primary reasons why many riders don't want to start on a smaller motorcycle: pride and cost. So let's talk about cost first. I think this is where a lot of riders get it wrong. So one of the reasons why some riders say they don't want to start on a smaller motorcycle is they can't afford or don't want to pay for the cost of two motorcycles. But if you do it right, it doesn't have to cost as much as you think. And in today's market, you might even be able to make a little money on the deal. So if your goal is to cost effectively start on a smaller motorcycle and then buy a larger one when you're ready, here's the trick. Buy a used motorcycle, preferably from an individual, not a dealer. Craigslist is a good source. With some careful looking and patience, there are some fantastic deals to be made. People sometimes give me a hard time about the number of bikes that I've had here in the garage on MCrider, but on many of them, I've bought them, rode them for a year, and then sold them for the same or even a little more than I paid for them. This is even easier to do when you're buying a smaller motorcycle. Once you buy that starter motorcycle and you're sure that you don't want to keep it, make sure you don't put any money into it with accessories, because any money that you put into that bike is probably sunk money at that point. So don't add a lot of options to it. Just keep it the way it is. Because the cost of a small used motorcycle is so low to begin with, it won't depreciate nearly as much as a larger, more expensive motorcycle. It can often be sold after riding it for a year or more for nearly what you paid for it. And if your deal is good to begin with, so that initial purchase, sometimes you can even make a little bit of money on it. As I was writing this video, I looked on Craigslist, and in the DFW area alone, there are 3 Honda Rebels for sale. I just picked that at random. There are a ton of different, smaller starter motorcycles. They range on Craigslist anywhere from $2,200 to $5,200 for a Honda Rebel 500. That's probably getting up there a little bit. But there's one Honda Rebel that's $2,200, only has 2,500 miles on it. Looks like it's in really good shape, and it could probably be bought for a little bit less than the asking price. You could ride it for a year, and you could sell it for the same or even a little more money. But even if you're really bad at deal making and you lost, say, 25% on your transaction after riding it for a year, it would only cost you $550 to ride this motorcycle for an entire year if you had to sell it for 25% less than you paid for it. In that year, if you practice using the field guide, you'll grow more as a rider on that smaller motorcycle than you would ever do on a large cruiser. That is less forgiving of mistakes, and you're afraid to drop it. Nobody wants to drop their dream motorcycle. There's a reason why motorcycle training classes have small bikes to train on. The cost of the motorcycle is less, and they're easier for you, the rider, to learn on. Those are all the same reasons why you should consider a small bike as your first motorcycle. Now, I might be able to win that argument on getting you to see things my way when it comes to cost associated with starting small. But this second reason why many riders start on a bigger bike is a tougher hill to climb, and that's pride. I get it. You don't want to be made fun of. You don't want to show up at a bike night on your Honda Rebel. Heck, a lot of Harley guys make fun of Sportsters, and, those are large bikes compared to many bikes from just a few years ago. Sportster's a decent-sized motorcycle, but for some reason they're kind of the outcast of the Harley group, and I've never quite understood why that is. I look at things a little differently, though. In my book, it's much more embarrassing for a rider to drop their big cruiser due to their lack of skills or to show signs that they really don't know what they're doing or know how to ride a bigger bike than it is to be really proficient rider and pull up to a bike night on a smaller motorcycle. I'd much rather see a rider pull up on a smaller motorcycle and show that they know what they're doing than to be that guy who's terrified on his big heavy cruiser. So I guess the question is, which one gives you more pride? Is it the bike underneath your butt, but anybody can go out and buy that same motorcycle? Or do you get more pride by being a rider who is totally in control of their machine? Being a rider in total control can only be earned. You can't go out and purchase it. and it should be a much greater goal for all of us. The goal is to eventually have both, a bike that you're proud of and one which you can ride safely and skillfully, but it takes time. It takes practice, and it's a quicker, safer process and more cost-effective process to start your two-wheel journey on a manageable motorcycle. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this subject, and if you want to continue building your skills, which should be all of us, new and experienced riders alike, I know of no better way to do that than with a membership to MCrider. You'll get access to the forums and the field guide with practice exercises and a whole lot of other perks. You can learn more at mcrider.com/member. Till next week, this is Kevin with MCrider, and I'll see you on the road.